Would you be interested in finding out that there is a compound out there that is remarkably effective at treating this pandemic? Of course you would. Come on, let's go find out. Hello everyone, Dr. Chris Martenson here. It's November 17th, 2020, and we're talking about this over here, which is some more uncommon sense, a short supply these days of that stuff, but we're going to be applying some more of it using this one weird trick, total clickbait, but of course it is, because this is really important data information I'm going to share with you today. It's just remarkable. But before we go there, let's go here, and I want to talk about this, which just came out today, and we'll just sort of play this, and maybe I'll talk along this as it goes, because it's just music. This is in Texas. We're looking at maybe $10 million of car hardware out there lined up, idling along to pick up some food and baskets of food. This speaks to the fact that we have an extraordinary economic emergency going on in the United States. It's happening everywhere that all these lockdowns have happened. This is the reality of the situation we're in right now, and it's unfortunate because it doesn't have to be this way. There are ways that we could get back to work and open up the economies, and that's what I've been talking about this whole time. There is a common sense approach which does get us there. So there's that. This also speaks to, I think, seeing those lines of cars. Let me just advance it to somewhere where we see all these again. Pause it. These are people who are really struggling, really hurting. So again, in the United States, the pandemic response, they're talking about another $2 trillion program with another $1,200 per person, which when you do the math works out to roughly 10% of the money that's being proposed would actually go to people. The rest goes to, you guessed it, big banks, big corporations, all of that. So the part one is, my critique is, obviously the people who need help are not getting it. That's a tragedy right there. Second thing I would notice is, this is a super inefficient way to go about this kind of a thing, having each person come with their car to a food center like this. There would be a much easier way to go about something like this, where people could identify through a website or something and then food's delivered to them. That would be the modern model. We also call it Amazon and UPS, stuff like that. So when I look at this picture, I just think to myself, this is wrong on so many levels. Only picture I could find that really captured that for you. All right, this is my kind of humor. Welcome to my show. Glad to have you here with me as we go through this. At any rate, you've been hearing about things like this now, which is that we have this massive second wave going on, third wave, whatever you want to call it. This is looking at hospitalizations in the United States. They've reached a new record high, hospitalizations. And again, this is really unfortunate because it doesn't have to be this way. It really doesn't. And I'm going to show you why in just a second. And as well, you have to, this game of comparisons now. So if we looked at, this is unfortunate, but how does it compare to other countries? And this really, I think, shows you it doesn't have to be this way, because look down there on the bottom, down here. Let me get my drawing tool out. I think it's time for the drawing tool now. Yeah, down here at the bottom, we're looking here at number of new cases per day normalized by the population, the only way to look at it. So for every 100,000 people in your population, how many new cases are you getting per day? And you can see down at the bottom, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, pretty much flatlined. I mean, really low numbers of cases per 100,000 people per day, measuring in the low single digits, 1, 2, something like that. Meanwhile, United States, European Union, not doing so good in this story here. Doing really pretty bad. And so the question is, what's really happening? United States obviously still on a very strong upswing like this. Looks like the European Union may be on a slope that's going to look like that, which would bring it in line with curves that we would see, say, for Israel, India. A lot of places actually have curves that kind of look like that. So I know it sounds pretty awful at this point in time, but is it really all that awful? Let me see, where should I go with that? Blast from the past here. Let's take a look at this. Thank you to the person who reminded me of this on Twitter today. Awesome stuff. This is the pre-race analysis. This comes to us from the World Economic Forum, which, by the way, the same people who want to bring you a great reset. This was their analysis in 2019. This comes to us from where they were looking at countries' preparedness for pandemics. Very foresightful of them in November 2019, exactly 1 year ago, to put together this handy list. And look, they said countries best prepared to deal with the pandemic would be the United States, the UK, and on down this list. I think now we have, a year later, we have enough actual real-world data to repopulate this chart with some real data. And here I've put in deaths per million people. United States at 763, the actual world leader would be the United Kingdom. These two, far and away, least prepared to deal with the pandemic, but somehow they floated to the top of this first list here. How did that happen? Netherlands at 502, Australia doing great down here at 35. Canada climbing back up at 292. Thailand, 0.9, that is not a typo, 0.9 deaths per million people in Thailand. Maybe we should be asking, we being those top countries there, ought to be wandering over to Thailand saying, what are you all doing over here? Be a great opportunity to ask that question. You got Sweden here, is much maligned, but they didn't shut their economy down. Make of that what you will. Doing obviously a lot better than these two countries here, which are both entering renewed lockdowns. Denmark, but again, South Korea, 10. Come on. Finland, 67. What's going on here? In fact, what if we go further down this little analysis here and we look into, say, this would be the actual best pandemic list. So my data here, flying around. Got to get rid of that thing. It's like my own personal ADHD squirrel. All right, the data comes from worldometers. The methods here, I looked at only countries with 5 million more population because really small countries might mess the data up a bit. And then I sorted it and said, well, who has 100 or fewer deaths per 1 million of population? Look at this here. India, obviously a very big country here, over 8 million total cases, but they're only rocking and sporting at 93 deaths per million. Again, we're comparing that with over 750 for both the UK and the US per million. Greece, at 87, part of the European Union, and we're seeing obviously very different results from the European Union. Azerbaijan at 87. Look at this list though. Slovakia, Philippines, Finland, which we showed you on that list before. Egypt. Egypt. Indonesia, UAE, Norway, Algeria, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Australia. Hey, congrats Australia, hanging out down here. Pakistan. By the way, these are some of the countries that are doing the best, all very large countries with very large populations, and weren't on the World Economic Forum 2019 Pandemic's Best Prepared list. So maybe we should talk to these countries and find out what they're up to, and let's do that. Let's turn to Greece really quickly here. Greece hanging out at 87 deaths. Check this out. Back in June, when we were talking about the drug which shall not be named, Dwizabin, Greece moved forward with Dwizabin, and it says here, seemingly unaffected by the controversy in the global scientific community, seemingly unaffected, just like unaffected by the global controversy over this thing that shall not be named, which is ridiculously safe and may have efficacy. Greece resumed production of this stuff here and to treat cases of coronavirus and is conducting clinical trials with a calm and distant approach. Almost sounds like Sweden. Hey, you know what? We're just going to kind of do this our own way and see what happens. Now, this next part is really important because they said here that, reading down this article a little further, they imported 5 tons of raw material from India and they took it into a laboratory, went into high alert, and on the weekend of March 21st, they were working constantly, they were under pressure, and in 30 hours, they produced 24 million doses, which were offered to the Greek National Health System. How about that? They're like, wow, we need more of this stuff. They went into emergency alert, and within 30 hours, they'd produced 24 million doses. That's kind of interesting. You know why that's interesting? Because if you use the Google search term shortages, I did lupus shortages Dwizabin here. And the method here is I just did a straight screen grab. There was no filtering, no sorting, no cherry picking. I just got this, right? Which is all about, look, this is how the Dwizabin shortage is hurting all these poor people who need it for other reasons like lupus and things like that. Look at this, possible consequences of the shortages of Dwizabin here from November. We're still in this country like, oh no, possible shortages, possible consequences. Look at this, shortage of Dwizabin hits mothers with lupus. How cruel can you be taking Dwizabin from mothers with lupus? Sounds pretty heartless, doesn't it? But this is the state of my country, is out here like hand-wringing like there's nothing we can do. Not for nothing, but Greece managed to figure out how to make 5 tons of it in a weekend. It's really not hard to make is my point here. So the idea that there are shortages, those are self-imposed, self-inflicted wounds. There are no actual shortages if you decide you don't want to have shortages. It's a very easy compound to make. So if you do hear about these shortages affecting mothers with lupus, think of the women and children, and unborn children in this case. I would invite you to think, did that have to be that way? Or was there anything else that anybody could have done possibly in a weekend? By the ton. Yeah, that would be the point there. So I'm going to bring you some really exciting research now, what this show is all about here today. And by the way, this next research report, we've picked up some funding and we now have a sponsor. This next research report is brought to you by these cookies and this chlorinating agent. These two things together, that's who this next report is brought to you by. As well as, it's obviously those things go together, obviously. You often think of these cookies and pools in the same breath. Of course you do. And what's a pool party without your favorite apple-flavored, what would we call that? Snack. Just put a little apple flavor on those cookies. What could be better? So this is our sponsorship for today. I hope you're following along. For those of you who may not be, because maybe you've picked up this channel, I found that if I mention certain things, the algorithms will filter this out and I can't actually reach as many people. So this is me just having a little bit of fun trying to evade saying certain things. But I hope you're following. You put these two terms together, those cookies plus that chlorinating agent, squish them together, squish them, and you got a word. And then again, don't forget to include your favorite topping. This horse paste, apple flavored. Apple flavored, I think, is a great flavor combo. All right, here's this important research. It is the efficacy and safety of ivermectin for treatment and prophylaxis of this other thing here, this thing we're talking about, this disease. And by the way, it mentions both of these things. This comes from Egypt. So again, there are countries out there who don't have the luxury of fooling around, using multi-$1,000 ineffective treatments, things like that. They actually have to do stuff that works. And they have to do it within a relative budget. So some of the very best research around treating COVID-19 right now is actually coming from places like Egypt at this point in time. So let's go into it. This is the title of it. This is the link down here. Of course, as always, everything that I'm going to bring you is always linked in the in the description that follows beneath this particular video. So all the way down there, if you want to, you can just click it. Otherwise, you could copy all those letters down and numbers and recreate the URL that way. So what was this study? So awesome stuff here. Really nicely done study. I like it. So subject and methods. They took 600 subjects, 400 symptomatic confirmed COVID-19 patients. So, and they confirmed that with the PCR test. So these are people who have COVID and they're symptomatic. Remember, you can be infected, but not symptomatic. So if you're infected with SARS-CoV-2, the virus, that can show up on a PCR test too. That's different from being a case. A case is when you have symptoms, both the infection detected and the symptoms of it. Cough, shortness of breath, dyspnea, anosmia, things like that. So these are 400 symptomatic confirmed COVID-19 patients. And then they also did 200 healthcare workers, and there's 6 groups. But the groups we care about today is these first 4 groups. Group 1, it's 100 patients with mild or moderate COVID-19 infection, and they received a 4-day course of ivermectin plus standard of care. Group 2, 100 patients, again with mild or moderate COVID-19, and they received DWSNBN here plus standard of care. Group 3, 100 patients with severe COVID, okay? So now they're on oxygen ventilation, they've got D-dimer levels that are elevated, they've got all these clinical markers of severe infection, microthrombosis, all that stuff. So they received ivermectin plus standard of care, and then group 4. These are patients with also severe COVID, and they received this DWSNBN here plus standard of care. So if we put that all out into a table so you can just understand, groups 1 and 3 received ivermectin, and so 1 and 3 is moderate and severe. Groups 2 and 4, so if we think of this ivermectin as the odd numbers, and this other one, DWSNBN, is the even numbers, 2 and 4, okay? And the severity is going up. 1, 2, 1 and 2 are mild, moderate. Severe is 3 and 4. Okay, hope that all made sense. That was my best job to sort of break down this study for you. So let's look at their stunning results. And by the way, I included this little bit of border over here just to show you that I didn't cut this image off when I grabbed it. That's how the PDF came. So what were the variables? And then what was the diagnosis here? So group 1 and group 3, remember, are ivermectin. Groups 2 and 4 are this other compound, DWSNBN. All right, so in the mild, moderate COVID group with ivermectin, out of 100, 99 improved. 1 progressed to a more serious stage, 0 died. That's a goose egg. Okay. Group 2, which is the other compound that we're talking about here, 74 improved, 22 progressed to the next level, and 4 died. This is massively different result right here. But really check this out now in group 3 and 4. Group 3, again with ivermectin here, out of 100, 94 improved, 4 progressed, 2 died. And in group 4, 50 improved, 30 progressed, and 20 died. So there you have it, head-to-head comparison. By the way, I don't see that they're using doxycycline in here. I don't see that they've included zinc, none of that. This is just head-to-head, ivermectin plus DWSNBN, those two pieces together. This is stunning results right here. So let me undo some of this yellow so you can look at these numbers for yourself more carefully here. But this is astonishing. Out of the total of this other group, we see 4 and 20 died. So 24 total compared to 2. Oh my gosh. Again, this is why I've been leaning very heavily towards ivermectin the whole time. People have asked me about that. Chris, you don't mention DWSNBN as much anymore. It's because the data keeps pouring in like this. And to continue their stunning results, they were looking at things like hemoglobin levels, T lymphocyte counts, lymphocyte percentage, C-reactive protein, serum ferritin, D-dimer levels. All of these are measures of health or illness in this case. And then the PCR, how many days before that PCR test came back negative, no sample of SARS-CoV-2 detected. These numbers are stunning. All of these p-values are less than 0.001, right down the board here. So just to look at one of these, D-dimer level here measured at 0.72 plus or minus 0.12 compared to 1.86 plus or minus 0.6. Huge difference. Looking at, it took 6 days plus or minus 1 in ivermectin to clear out the virus to undetectable levels. It took 12 plus or minus 4 days under DWSNBN on this other one. Every single one of these measures, the C-reactive protein, much better. T lymphocyte count, much better. Everything is just better with ivermectin. It's really stunning results there. And by the way, we looked at groups 1 through 4. This was a 6-group set. The other 2 groups are healthcare workers who were either given ivermectin or not, but prophylactically. And then the question was asked, how many of these people developed a detectable SARS-CoV-2 infection? But this didn't go to COVID. So out of group 5, which is ivermectin, group 6 was, I can read it to you here. Group 5 was all the PPE stuff you would do, hand washing, all that, plus ivermectin. And group 6 just did PPE, hand washing, all that, but no ivermectin. Out of 100 of these people, 2% ended up getting a detectable SARS-CoV-2 infection compared to 10. P-value is less than 0.05, so this was statistically significant. So it has a very large hazard reduction. So this is clearly pouring in. This is incredible results. If you lived in an intact culture, they would say stop the presses, new standard of care, especially on an outpatient basis, but even in the hospital. Ivermectin seems to work both prophylactically. That's what we're finding out in this story. It works during mild and moderate, and it works during severe. It helps every stage of the way. So ivermectin is the way to go. By the way, I should note though, I didn't point this out. What they did here was they actually gave them a lot more ivermectin than anything else I'd seen so far. So they were giving 400 micrograms per kilogram. Normal dose is 150 to 200 micrograms. When I was starting this reporting, that was the original dose. It was one of those. And then we heard from the Eastern Valley Medical System, the EVMS Math Plus protocol. They recommended 200 micrograms per kilogram on days 1 and 2. Here they gave 400 micrograms across each of 4 days. So that was their protocol on this. So that's a grand total of 1,600 micrograms per kilogram, which is 8 times as much as I was starting with originally when we just said was single dose of 200 micrograms per kilogram. So that's what they did. No serious side effects noted. It's a very safe compound. Just putting that out there for reference range. If you're in healthcare, make note of that. And you're going to want to chase this study down, which again, it's in the link is in the description down below. I apparently forgot to drop it right on the slide here. Did I? Oh no, there it is. It's right there. So you can pick it up there or again in the description down below because I like to source everything. By the way, with this amazing data coming out like this, because now what do we have in our arsenal? We know that vitamin D drops the hazard ratio by like 90% if you've got adequate levels in there. We know that selenium levels have a really important role to play in helping to prevent both the spread of and progression of COVID-19. We know that ivermectin is the bomb in this story. Let's wander over to the NIH real quick and see what their current latest guidelines are. I pulled this down on 11/17, that would be today. And let's see, if you are not hospitalized, so this would be outpatient setting, or you're hospitalized but you don't require supplemental oxygen yet, their standard of care says no specific antiviral or immunomodulatory therapy is recommended. The panel recommends against the use of dexamethasone, and see the remdesivir section for a discussion of the data on using this drug in hospitalized patients. So if you're a healthcare worker in the United States and you say, what's the latest? What's the latest? What's the latest that we know about? Latest guidelines, what do we know? For somebody who isn't yet hospitalized, and of course, as a doctor, you would be very interested in stopping somebody from progressing to becoming hospitalized, of course. And this is all we got in this country. And by the way, you're going to find a similar standard of care, substandard of care, I should say, in the UK. You're going to find a similar one in France at this point. You'll find a similar one in Australia even though their numbers are better. They're managing this disease by containing its spread more so than having great standards of care like this. So it's really puzzling that I'm here talking to you, surfacing these incredible results like this, and that they're still basically chirping crickets in the healthcare settings of the so-called countries most likely to deal with a pandemic well. Whoops, guess that didn't work out according to plan. So at any rate, you know what, this isn't that hard. It's not as hard as we're making it at this point in time. And by the way, you don't need to shut down economies and have mile-long parades of cars for people who are desperate for food if you do this stuff. You protect those most at risk. You wear a mask, especially in crowds, because you just don't want other people spitting on you, or you don't want those big globs coming in. You want to limit that because, again, lower inoculum means less disease. That's just science at this point. You encourage people, take vitamin D, lots of it, zinc and selenium. You get those 3 in, titrated up to good levels in people's serum, great outcomes or better outcomes, depending on how you want to look at it. And then, of course, early outpatient use of ivermectin and DWSNBN. Both of those, DWSNBN has use. I'm not totally chucking it out with the bathwater right now. It has a lot of use, and it seems to be very, very effective early on as prophylactically and within 48 hours of exposure. The later you wait, the less happens, of course. And we have, I don't know how many studies I've read now where they're like, well, we gave DWSNBN to people once they came into the hospital, they were on oxygen and it didn't work. I read about one of those new studies a week, and I'm just downcast eyes. I'm so disappointed at this point. Like, thank you for proving one more time that it doesn't work late. We don't need any more studies like that right now. Thank you very much. But and then if we did that, if we did these things, if we did these top 4 things, you can just otherwise live your life, and that would be fantastic. So, but protecting those at risk, people who are immunocompromised, people who are really elderly, people who maybe haven't gotten their vitamin and supplement levels up to a point, all those things, people who are cancer treatment patients, people who've got any sort of medical issues where they're otherwise weakened. Of course, you protect them. Of course you do. Of course you do. But otherwise, it's this simple. You wear a mask in crowds, you take your vitamin D, you make sure your zinc and selenium levels are topped up, and then you have this early use of ivermectin. And ivermectin can be later used, but why bother? Why wait until your body's ravaged? Take it early, take it often. And the Egypt study I just pointed out they were using up to 16 times as much as I originally thought. The safety profile on ivermectin is very, very high. And of course, you would want to have that administered preferentially by a medical professional. But if you can't get access to it at all, I know people are figuring out how to take care of that all on their own. So, sometimes I leave people with a pithy saying. I'm ready to let's end today on a really high note. And one of the most profound sayings I know about that I came across years ago when Helen, rest her soul, sent me this card, which I took a picture of for Christmas one year. It really landed with me, and it's an old Persian proverb. It says, if you have no trouble, buy a goat. So for those of you who are thinking about getting goats, just remember this card, because I can guarantee you there's a lot of wisdom in this. More generally, if you have no troubles, make sure you follow the advice of your national health managers, because then you'll have troubles too. Am I calling our national health managers goats? No, goats have a lot more integrity. Goats got a goat. A goat's going to be a goat. Yeah, it's going to do what it's going to do. I love the goatness of goats. Just know what you're getting into if you get a goat. But our national health managers have done an atrocious job. Awful job. Terrible job. And they continue to do a terrible job. And how do I know? Because I can just download this kind of stuff straight off of the national manager's website. There's no excuse for it at this point that I can think of. No good excuse. All right, that's all I got for you today. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Remember, hit the like button if you found this information useful. Trust me, a lot of people are going to find this information useful. We need to get this information out there. And we do that by clicking the like button. That's the easy, passive way. The more direct way is share this. Take the share link off and copy it and send it out to people and say, this one weird trick may save your life. It could. It could easily save your life. That's what this data says right here. Which column would you rather be in? Columns 1 and 3 or columns 2 and 4? And by the way, columns 2 and 4 are still better than what would happen if you just went under what I would call other standard of care. All right, that's it. That's all I got today. Thank you very much for listening. And don't buy a goat unless you want to have a more interesting life. All right, see you everyone.